What is going on, guys? It's Zigzag here. Welcome back to another Geoguessr video. So today's video will be a play along in which I'll be playing diverse world games and explaining my entire thought process. Meanwhile, you guys will play along, and hopefully by that you'll learn some tips and specific hints to try and get a lot better at the game. And yeah, it should be a fun one. I think these ones always have a positive reception. So we're just going to head straight into it. I'm going to make this a challenge, and yeah, hopefully I just make a really nice and full explanation of everything that goes into each of these guesses that I'm making. So here's the first link. Hit that up in the description, and let's head into the first round here. I'm also going to be playing without the Google car, so hopefully that provides some more sustainable hints for you than just relying on the car meta. The first round here, one thing that I'm noticing is that we have a little bit of English here, so that would probably lean me towards some countries and not others. You wouldn't see so much English in Latin America, I would say. So another thing to notice here is that we're driving right-hand side of the road, and most importantly perhaps is that this road is made of all concrete. So normally you'd have bitumen, but concrete roads are quite common, for example in Ecuador, Colombia, Philippines, sometimes Thailand, and sometimes Chile as well. So several countries using concrete roads like this. But now if we zoom in over here, we can also see that we've got a yellow line with white dashed between next to it. And so if we add all those clues together, as well as all these palms and the quite tropical climate, this has to be Philippines. So Philippines, one of the only countries, I think it's the only country in Asia that would do these road markings. Also the only country in Asia that would have wide highways made of concrete as well. In Thailand, you'll normally see thinner roads made of concrete. So yep, all adds up. Plus we're driving right hand side of the road. So many clues on this first round to be able to get there. And to me, this feels southern, although I'm always wrong. So let's go on Bohol here. Not really sure what it's going to be. Ends up being not too far away in Panay, so a decent score for the first round there. Mostly I'm trying to get the right country here, but you know, there will also be hopefully some good scores as well. Okay, so next one here, we've got these kind of ones here are like these concrete poles. They're definitely Soviet style poles, so they'll often be in A-frames or just standalone like this one, and they'll always be like a square shaped. And sometimes they'll be a bit darker, sometimes they'll be lighter like this one, and then at the top you'll have like a kind of metal bar like that. So countries where you can see that: Baltics, Ukraine, Russia, Kyrgyzstan. That's about all the ones I can think of where you'd have such poles like this. So now we continue to look at here. So this one, it feels like a decently cool climate, but also quite foresty. So I was thinking like Russia near the Baltics, or maybe Latvia or Lithuania for this one. So I'm just trying to think. So the houses kind of seem more Western European. Like these ones don't really look typical Russia. That's probably the thing that makes me like Baltics the most here. Unfortunately, so in a run like this, what I'd really be trying to see is if there are any blue strips on the plates. This plate here doesn't appear to have any blue strips. So that may indicate that we're actually in Russia. That's a really good one if you don't have any car meta. Presumably for you guys, you probably saw a long antenna or a short antenna, but because I can't rely on that, then it makes it a little bit more difficult. But as for this speed sign, I feel like with the kind of lollipop design with the smaller text, that might be a Russian thing, but that's kind of something you have to learn by vibes. So basically, in conclusion, I do think we're probably going to be near the Baltics in Russia here, so maybe this kind of direction. It could always be out here as well, and who knows, it could be in Asia as well. I'm not really sure, but yeah, it feels a little bit too cold and like too like green. If you know what I mean, like it's kind of this like colder climate looking vegetation. Feels too cold to be somewhere in Ukraine, I think. So yeah, let's go for this and see how close we are. And yes, it was in Russia, so the number plate helps us over the edge there. We're near St. Petersburg, so all the way near Estonia there, but a good effort nonetheless. Okay, next one here, we have some bollards. So here's where bollard knowledge comes in handy, but let's just pretend we didn't know what bollards these were and take a look around, shall we? Okay, so here is another country that uses this single yellow line with the white dash. So not many countries. So let me tell you all the countries where you can see that. So Argentina does it sometimes. Uruguay does it sometimes. As we said, Philippines, New Zealand. I'm just trying to think of any other country that does that. I think you may be able to see it occasionally in South Africa, possibly, although I can't quite remember. No, I think they'd have another yellow on the outside. So, or next to the white dashes. So I think that is pretty much the 4 countries where you can see it at a good, like, frequency. If we look at this car here, it's definitely parked as if it was driving on the left-hand side of the road, because, like, obviously, if he's pulling out here it's easier for him to get on the left. Now, he could have done a U-turn like that, so it's always possible, but well, yeah, just something to keep in mind. Hopefully he wasn't behind the webcam there, but that's the one I was talking about. Okay, and then, yeah, so we got the bollards. We've also got English writing on the road, and crucially, if you don't know bollards, this signpost is painted white, and there is nowhere in Australia, I think you might see where I'm going with this, there's nowhere in Australia that paints them white, so we have to be in New Zealand here. And also these are the New Zealand bollards. They'll have the thick red on one side, and then the red strip, that's a better example here, the white strip on the right hand side. Or on the left-hand side, sorry. Okay, so we're going to be somewhere in New Zealand here. I think maybe north of the South Island or somewhere in the North Island. I kind of like this kind of area here just because it is quite hilly and quite cold looking. But yeah, could easily be North Island. I could even see it being quite far north. But yeah, New Zealand, not really my strong point, in all honesty. So I'm just going to go here. Ends up being South Island indeed, actually, on this section. So probably quite distinctive if you're good at New Zealand, but unfortunately I'm not that good. Anyway, we get away with that one quite nicely. Okay, so next one is one where we're really going to want to rely on architecture. Look at all these white buildings everywhere. So that is definitely the biggest clue here. Once you're an experienced Geoguessr player, you won't notice these white buildings. So let's zoom in on this sign here. We have some Arabic here, that's for sure. And then it's kind of hard to read this language. I think it looks like some kind of Romance language. Of course, I think I do know what language it is, but I'm just trying to like say I didn't know. I think I would have trouble reading that. Okay, so taking a look around here, there's definitely a combination of like blue and white in the architecture, very typical of this country. Also, the center line in the road is white, and also the outside lines are white as well, which is super useful because a lot of the countries that look similar to this will use some form of yellow lines. And then zooming in over here, and we have a follow car with the red on the registration plate, which is a government vehicle inside Tunisia. This is the Tunisian follow car, and this is also very Tunisian architecture. There's nowhere else where you'll really see anything quite like this, I think. So then we get to picking a town here. When it comes to Tunisia, I like to... This one's a little bit more difficult, I would say, because I think we're right near the ocean. So I could see us being here or something like that. I'm not really sure if that town has coverage, but it's probably going to be somewhere near the beach, which is making it harder for me to judge the climate. Regardless, it's definitely Tunisia. Driving right hand side of the road, all white road lines, got the follow car, got the houses. So let's see if we're close. Ends up being on this island. Okay, that actually kind of makes sense. I did consider it. So yeah, that's kind of the southernmost extent of the coverage in Tunisia. There's not really too much south of that, and it goes all the way up to Tunis, but all these towns out here in the west of the country are not covered at all. Okay, so we've gone decently so far. Nothing too insane, but also good. Okay, so here we have all white road lines. Once again, that's a great thing to consider. Let's check out these signs. So this sign is set up for right-hand drive. You can tell that because as someone pulls up here, they're going to be, you know, more so to the right because they're driving on the right-hand side of the road, going to let people in driving right here. And we know that because this sign is here on the right-hand side. So yeah, just a good thing to always keep in mind when you aren't quite sure. You can't see any cars. Like this guy's a bit too far in the distance. This guy, yeah, you could get fooled. So it's good to rely on signs because they're almost always telling the truth. Okay, so we got white road lines here, fairly flat, which is interesting, and we do have some hills in the distance. One of the big ones for this round particularly is that we're using a lot of metal power lines here. We see some non-metal ones in the background, but definitely a predominance of metal one all the way through into the background over here, and that's definitely a distinctive feature of this country. Another distinctive feature of this country is that we have like a pepperish road, salt and pepper kind of road is what people like to call it, and there are certain places in the world where you'll see this more for whatever reason. One of them, we're not in Texas right now, but you do see it in kind of Texas and Oklahoma, I think, quite a bit for whatever reason. Seems to be a bit of a help for over there, but clearly with these red roofs and everything, we should be somewhere in Asia. And we've got white soil as well. And so, let me get to telling you what it is. So I do believe that this one is going to be Turkey. The all-white road lines, this kind of texture in the road, as well as these metal power lines, which are very common in Turkey. You see them often decently often enough in like Serbia and Bulgaria, I want to say. And then also in some of the Middle Eastern countries as well. But yeah, Israel definitely uses them a lot as well. But I do think this one is going to be Turkey because of all the all-white road lines as well, which you can only barely see really. But yeah, you can see that these are white on the outside. whereas there would not be in Israel, for example. So we've got to pick a flat part of Turkey here. So let's zoom in and find a part that kind of fits. I can imagine us being somewhere over here. It's fairly green. So if we zoom out, we can see how green the area we've picked is. And not particularly green there. So maybe we are actually just really close. We could even be in European Turkey here, I think. In fact, I think that's what I like, just because it's so flat and green. And it kind of reminds me of Bulgaria, especially this house over here kind of gives me a bit of a Bulgarian vibe. But I could be totally wrong here. And we end up being in Bulgaria. Wow, I was not expecting that. The road itself looked very Turkish to me, so there you go. But I did mention Bulgaria also has quite a lot of those metal poles as well. So definitely a tough round, and so close to Romania there. But yeah, so I did say the house looked Bulgarian. At least we guessed close to Bulgaria. So 21.2 is a decent score, especially with the Russia. I think that was a very commendable effort. But of course, I can only assume that some of you guys did better than me. Anyway, let's head into the next challenge here, and hopefully we go well. I like to make these ones a bit longer, just so you can chill out, even if you're not playing along, and just have a good time watching. So here's the next one. This one, again, has a number of clues, so let's get straight into it. So looking at this plate over here, unfortunately the sun is a bit exposed on here, but looking at a lot of these plates, they don't seem to have blue strips. This one doesn't. This one does. Okay, so we've got like kind of a combination of blue strips and no blue strips, which, you know, there are some countries in which blue strips, which currently in 2022 use blue strips, but which previously didn't, and so it kind of seeps into the older Google coverage, because I can imagine this looks like Gen 3 coverage, so it was probably taken somewhere around 2015, around that kind of time, so maybe they weren't fully transitioned at that point, or something like that. Okay, you got me? So fairly hilly here, so that is definitely something to take into consideration. As for the architecture, kind of an interesting mix of signage here and brick buildings, as well as like kind of concreted buildings as well. Looking over here, we have a giveaway sign that's filled in yellow. I think that is going to be quite a useful hint when we think about that later on, because most countries use white giveaway signs. Okay. Climate, feeling fairly cold. One thing that's a little concerning to me is that we have almost no language here, and a lot of times for a round like this, we would want some language. We have a lot of birch trees though, so that kind of gives a colder vibe as well. Okay, so let me tell you what my thoughts are here. With a yellow fielding giveaway sign, I think our two real options here for this kind of round are Poland and Finland. Obviously, they're quite far from one another, but I'm still not entirely sure which country I want to go with just yet. I think I was leaning Finland as soon as I saw it, because we got like a Volvo over here, and it just feels more Finnish, I would say, but could easily be Poland as well. So yeah, I was thinking over here. So yeah, they're two countries that use these yellow filled-in signs. As for countries that do that, Finland, Sweden, Poland, sometimes North Macedonia and Greece. That's the ones for Europe. You've also got like, I think South Korea, Iceland sometimes does it as well. I mean, we could be in Iceland here, but you don't see blue strips, so shouldn't be Iceland. Also too many trees. So yeah, was never really going to be Iceland actually. So then I'm just trying to figure out which one I actually prefer here. Obviously, neither Finland nor Poland are particularly mountainous, but you can get hills in both. Finland's more flat than Poland, for example. Poland gets a lot of mountains in the south and then kind of just hilly in different areas other than that. But as for me, I do think this is Finland. I could be wrong. If we were closer to this giveaway sign, I'm sure we could work it out better. But Finland's another one of these countries, as I said at the start of the round, where you sometimes don't have blue strips on some of the cars. So that's why I'm going to go for it. Let's see if I'm right. Ends up being correct there, so pretty happy with that. I mean, it was actually not, all things considered, not a particularly easy round. I did consider Poland as a possibility there. So, but the trees in the end kind of felt more northern, which is, yeah, just a vibes thing you kind of have to learn. Okay, so even though we have Google Car Meta turned off here, I can still see that this is Generation 2 by the peeking out of the blur here, and that means we've got old coverage, which is actually quite helpful for determining the country often. Now this one, I feel like I've had this round before, and I thought it was either so let's take it more slowly here. So the sun appears to be to the south, so we should be somewhere in the northern hemisphere. So that pretty much, well, a lot of the countries in the southern hemisphere have no Generation 2 coverage anyway, so we can rule out South Africa and Australia, but not that they were particularly strong options anyway. So these cars appear to be approaching us on the right-hand side of the road. So that means we're somewhere up driving on the right here. We have this yellow painted bridge here, which is really interesting. And I remember last time I had this round, that kind of fooled me a little bit. So, but let's continue looking here. White inner line. So the white inner line should suggest that we're not in the Americas. Chile uses white center lines, but that's Southern Hemisphere, and the sun doesn't fit that. But the rest of these countries all through the Americas tend to use yellow center lines. So that is probably going to rule those out. Now, in basically every Latin American country, you can find exceptions. But in North America, it tends to be almost no exceptions at all. And looking here, we have quite decent hills. It feels like a Mediterranean climate, or at least a somewhat of a temperate climate here, fairly dry. And these hills are quite distinctive, I would say. And so I'm pretty sure I had this round like a few weeks ago, and I'm pretty sure it was Greece, and I was really annoyed at myself for guessing Mexico, but the reason I guess Mexico was because of this bright painted bridge, but I'm pretty sure that was just like a kind of out of place thing that they had in Greece, and you should trust the white center line, don't be like me. But I don't think I was concentrating particularly hard. And as I recall, I think this was fairly far north. Of course, repeat rounds can be a curse, but I'm pretty sure I'm right about that. And so here you can see this sign. This is another example of signs set up for right-hand drive. And another thing that people told me about Greece is that the poles are often really tall. And you can see that this pole is actually quite remarkably tall compared to your average pole, I would say at least. So I think that would also fit here, so I'm pretty sure we are correct. And so it's almost time to guess. Generation 2, obviously Greece being one of the only southern European countries to have Gen 2. Greece, Italy, Spain, Portugal, they're the only ones really. So let's guess, see if I was right about that. Yeah, it ends up just being central Greece there. Couldn't quite remember, but that's fine. Okay, so next one here. We have some good language tips here, but let's kind of run through everything else first. So we have blue strips on the plates. So blue strips on the plates, don't get too confused, because blue strips on the plate doesn't mean it has to be a country in the EU. It just has to be kind of EU adjacent. For example, Iran actually has blue strips on their plates as well. Not that you get that in Geoguessr, but you can see it on the other maps as well. So bearing that in mind, so we're not in an EU country here is kind of what I was trying to say. And we have a flag here, so let's continue the round as if we hadn't seen that flag and we don't know what it is. So we've got concrete poles here, which is interesting. I do think we would typically see more, like as I said earlier in the video, we would see more metal poles in Turkey than concrete ones. But looking around here, we have a C with a hook on the bottom. So the only countries I can think of that do that are Turkey and Romania. I believe Romania has it with the S. I think Romania might have it with the C as well. If they don't have it with the C, then I think Portuguese does. Yes, I'm pretty sure Portuguese has it with the C. Maybe it's just with the S in Romanian. But regardless, you do see that in Turkish as well, obviously, because we are in Turkey here. But good to remember that C. As for this kind of pavement, quite common to see this kind of like brick pavement in towns, almost like just kind of like a what do you call it, tiled road. And we have lots of like apartment buildings, and definitely some countries do apartment buildings more than others, and it just tends to be the way in Turkey that most people live in apartment buildings, and so you tend to see these big kind of 3-story buildings at every corner, really, throughout the country. So this is definitely useful. What else is there to say here? Driving right-hand side of the road. Yeah, I don't think there's really too much else to say here. We have hills in the background, but it feels fairly flat otherwise, so it's kind of typical Turkey. I kind of want to guess somewhere like Konya or something like that. Kind of feels southern to me, but really not too sure here. Let's go in Isparta. Ends up being a decent guess here. We're over closer to the Mediterranean Sea, but still decent. 4.3 is good to me. Okay, so here we have Generation 4, lovely saturated coverage. There's a number of clues here that are going to give us the country, so let's run through them. So we are driving right-hand side of the road. We can tell that by the car here. Now, we can see a number of bollards lining this side of the road. Now, despite the fact that we do have yellow center lines here, you would almost never see so many bollards in the US or Canada. They just tend to be two countries that don't use bollards nearly as much. Now, you will see kind of similar looking bollards in the US, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in a row, I don't really think you'd ever see that in the US, or at least it's quite rare to see it. Whereas in Europe and in Australia and countries like that, you see it all the time. Okay, so these bollards have like a white reflector with black on it. So these are unique to the country, I believe, or at least only unique to a few countries. I'm pretty sure these ones are unique to this country. Turning around here, we can see a car with a green registration plate. That's a government vehicle. It's got the blue strip and then the green plate, if you can make that out over YouTube. We have hills here. It feels fairly cold. You have to say it's a fairly cold climate. We've got like kind of a lake here of some kind. I think we can see that peeking through the trees, and some kind of lakeside houses here. Okay, and then, yeah, just a really good condition road. There's definitely something to be said about learning where the poor conditioned roads are. Like, if you see a really poor condition road, there's a really good chance you're in Ukraine. You know, Ukraine, it's a country with a troubled past, not to mention the present. And, you know, that for that reason, a lot of their infrastructure is quite poor. So you often see poor quality roads in Ukraine, especially if we're talking about Europe. Obviously, Africa has a lot of poor quality roads as well. But when you see really high quality roads, you might be thinking of a country like Norway. Very, very strong public, you know, services and roads. I don't think I've ever seen a bad quality road in Norway, maybe once or twice, but suffice to say, it should be Norway here. This is the only country in Europe that uses any green plates for service vehicles like that. They're normally going to be like bigger kind of Mercedes or something like that, bigger truck kind of vehicles like this, but not that kind of size, if you know what I'm saying. And yeah, so it's hilly, fairly green. I kind of like this area of the country. Could be all the way north as well. I can easily imagine that, but yeah, I kind of think like maybe we're near a lake, but I don't feel like it's a massive lake. I'm going to go somewhere like this. It doesn't feel too far from Oslo for my money. So let's give that a go here and see. But the yellow dash is there. Oh man, I think that's about where I clicked, unfortunately, but that's fine. 4.6 is still great. But yeah, Norway is one of the only countries in Europe that uses yellow dashes on the center. You'll have yellow dashes on the outside for Ireland, and then double yellows occasionally in Finland. And Finland is actually another one of those countries that uses a single yellow with white dashes as well next to it, and like we saw in Philippines. So that's one I forgot to mention. Okay, so here we go. We have this is an interesting one. We've got a concrete pole here. Generation 2 coverage. We can see that from the wide blur again. Bit of language here, but we can ignore that for the moment because I'm sure a lot of you guys have decent language grasp already. This one is hilly. So at this stage, I would love to see some kind of a car number plate because that would really help me out. Regardless, it doesn't seem like we're going to be able to get that. This house is made of bricks. So when you see exposed bricks in Europe, you could say like Northern France, Luxembourg, Belgium, Netherlands, and the UK are really where you're going to see a lot of exposed bricks, sometimes Germany as well, and Denmark. Okay, so that's kind of like the belt, like kind of this V shape of where you're going to find a lot of brick houses. Elsewhere in Europe, not all too common. You do see them, but not all too common. Okay, so we have a concrete pole here. This one's got like a lot of metal bands around it. I feel like you see that a lot in like France, Belgium, Luxembourg area. I don't really consider that the other European countries use these kind of metal bands around a concrete pole too much, but that could be wrong. Not really too sure. So this language kind of appears French. However, I do have some reservations. Looking down at these houses over here, while they certainly could be French, the kind of black slate roofs definitely also reminds me of Luxembourg, and we can see we've got rolling hills here. So the fact that we see both of those may indicate that Luxembourg is also a strong possibility here. Not to mention that it feels like a fairly affluent area, and the north of France, as far as I know here, is not the richest area, which is where I'd place it for France, whereas Luxembourg is a wealthy country. So not really sure if that's actually a good line of logic, but it's something I'm thinking about at the moment. Luxembourg tends to get hillier in the north and flatter in the south, so I'm thinking North Luxembourg here. Of course, this could be like France near Strasbourg or something like that, or even just over here, well possible. Okay, so that's pretty much what we're working with here. I don't think there's any specific country hint here, so we may actually lose that streak. It's well possible. But that's kind of what I'm thinking. Here's a good example of that black slate roof that I was talking about, which is common in Luxembourg. So I think we'll just go for the guess here. It's going to be one of the two, I assume. But that's pretty much it. There's not too much going on here. So let's see if I'm right. Ends up being 66 kilometers over the border in Belgium. Not entirely surprised there, to be honest. But at least we kind of picked up the vibe. Now that house, so this one would be like very typical of South Belgium, but not of the north. In the north of Belgium and basically the rest of the country, kind of cutting off from the hilly part down here, you would see much more red brick, whereas in this one we saw a lot of white brick. So I'm not entirely surprised that we're over the border here, but still a decent score, 22.5 actually. That was all Europe. We played Europe. Well, it was Asia here, but we almost got the full Europe seed, and we get 22.5 to show for it, losing our country streak. But guys, I say we do for one more here, and hopefully I beat some of you guys at that one. I'd like to think that that was a decent game, especially for no car, no compass, but yeah, getting those country streaks is tough on this map and this mode. Okay, so here is a good little round. I like this one. Should be an interesting get. See if we can win a bit of a 50-50 here. Okay, so here now we got a bit more bollard guesser. If you know your bollards, this round does become significantly easier. But actually, there's a number of things that I can tell you guys about this round. Okay, so first off, we've got a chevron here. Red and white. Red on white is the most common chevron type in Europe. There are so many countries, especially in Eastern Europe, that use this. For example, like Croatia, Romania, Turkey, I believe Hungary, Slovakia, Czechia, and then a lot of the kind of ex-Soviet countries in kind of the more Russian sphere of influence use white on red as opposed to red on white, so you can distinguish them that way. I'll flash up a map. If not, someone remind me and I'll put it inside the description. But yeah, that's definitely worth learning these chevrons. For example, there's also, like, you can also get yellow on black, which is in Portugal, Ireland, Norway, and Luxembourg. I can't remember which the other one is that uses those, but you know, it's suffice to say, very useful to learn those. But here we have the bollard with the two orange reflectors. This is only in 2 countries, and those are Slovakia and Czechia. So we've already narrowed down mostly using this bollard, but say we didn't have the bollard, we could also narrow it down to some kind of Eastern European country, most likely with this one here. Okay, but now let's look at this guardrail, which also has like a flat edge and a wide gap between. And I'm pretty sure this one, if not exclusive, is most commonly found in Czechia and Slovakia. So Czechia and Slovakia are cheeky because they tend to use all the same things, and it makes it very, very difficult to tell the difference. Okay, this is Generation 3 coverage, by the way, which you would see in both countries, whereas Generation 4 would only really be seen in Czechia, barring a few tiny examples. So yeah, we should be somewhere in either of the countries, as we've established. Okay, so then I guess we look a bit further around and see if there's anything else here. This one is definitely hilly, but not in a way that kind of tells me one or the other. I guess, as a rule, like, Slovakia is more mountainous, but you do get tons of hills in Czechia as well. I think at this point, I do actually prefer Slovakia, but it's just a vibe thing at this stage. There's not anything that would really tell me one way or the other, and I'm very prepared to say that it could easily be Czechia. Also, we've got a Skoda here, and Skodas are quite common in both countries, made around there. And also we have all white road lines, obviously typical for Europe, if you didn't know that yet, and blue strip on the plate. So it all checks out, that's for sure. Just trying to think of where I actually want to put this one. But yeah, as for me, I think just somewhere. Well, I might just click near the border as a bit of a hedge. Sometimes you just got a hedge in Geoguessr, and I feel like that's kind of right now. Although road quality is very good here, I don't really know if I could use that to swing my decision one way or the other. Might feel a bit more Western European, but you could certainly see it in either country. There's no doubt about that. I might actually go Czechia here. I might. But yeah, I'm still going to click near the border here just because I'm pretty hopeless when it comes to this 50-50. So let's find out, shall we? Ends up being 32 kilometers away, so a good switch there. A really nice score. Plenty of clues to get that one off of, but we end up getting a nice guess as well, which is fantastic. Okay, here's the next one here. Very dry round off the bat. Will we see any cacti here? I don't see any, but I wouldn't have been surprised to have, to be honest. We got a painted front of the house here, quite typical for Latin America, you could say. Taking a look at these houses, a lot of them like kind of made of mud bricks as well, also decently typical for that area of the world as well. We've got hills in the background here, definitely worth paying attention to. So we can pretty much rule out a country like Uruguay where you would not have any hills that size. So that's good. Now let's check the sun. So sun, it seems to be more so to the south. However, it is almost midday, so it is quite hard to tell whether the sun is to the north or to the south. I would say it's more so south. Looking just ahead of us here, we have what I would call an octagonal pole. You can see 1, 2, 3 sides here, but I assume this one would actually be either hexagonal or octagonal, probably octagonal. It's also got some writing on the side of it as well. And so, countries that use octagonal poles, Mexico is the big one. Mexico, you will see octagonal poles very commonly. Colombia also, you will occasionally see octagonal poles, and I feel like I've seen them in Ecuador too, if not similar ones. Now, this round could have been difficult by the fact that we have clear satellite dishes, which are much more common in Brazil. However, I'm thinking this one's Mexico, and I do think that you would kind of see that kind of thing in rural Mexico as well. So, satellite dishes that are clear, common in Brazil. I think you also get them quite a lot in Indonesia and Malaysia, maybe Thailand too. I think that they're some of the other countries where you'll see such satellite dishes. But the big one here is the octagonal pole and the architecture as well. I would say these kind of white buildings, more common for Mexico. So it has to be fairly dry here, but also I don't really feel like it is too far north either because of the kind of whitishness of the soil. I feel like it would be a little more red up here. So then, I'm just kind of thinking like somewhere in the drier zones out here would kind of make sense to me. Otherwise, we could be a little bit further over this direction. And that's kind of the two things I'm really thinking here. But yeah, I think this will be a chill guess. Regardless, we're going to be decently close, I reckon. We're 40 kilometers away, so this has been an actual nut start to the seed. Very, very, very happy with these guesses. And so there we were. This has been a really nice start. See what we get on the next one, especially for no car, no compass. Okay, so next one here. We are aided by a number of things. We're driving right-hand side of the road. First thing to tick off the list. Okay, so we've got a bit of a domain name here, so that will definitely help out. Okay, so let's just run through some of the things here. This architecture, I would say, is very like typical of Czechia, Slovakia, and Serbia. Yeah, definitely those three countries would come to mind when I see around like this. Also, we have these round poles. Round concrete poles are also very common in all three countries, maybe particularly Czechia and Slovakia. They love to use them over there. So no holy poles or anything in those three countries at all. Okay, so then let's check out the kind of what do I want to say next? I think this sign is quite common in Eastern Europe, this one. You also see a lot in Turkey and South Africa and the South African countries. Okay, so the houses are also going right to the footpath here. So like these 4 houses in a row here. That is something that is typical for all three countries as well. Very common in Serbia, but obviously with the SK domain name, we are in Slovakia this time. So I may have been tempted to go Serbia had we not had that. Indeed, I probably would have, to be honest. So let's see if we see any hills. That looks like it's probably just trees. So we have to be in a rather flat part of Slovakia here. I would say we're going to be far south. I would say we're going to be far south in a town like that, maybe. We might even have the town name here. Not that I'll try and find it, but yeah. Don't really see it. Not to worry. Not to worry. Okay, so, yep, definitely feeling Slovakia. There's not really too much else to say here. Just a very like European breakdown of cars. All the cars are European. It's just very Eastern European vibes. You kind of have to know it. A lot of single-story houses, but then also apartments in the background. I would say that this is just super typical Slovakia. And so I think like a southern guess. The only thing atypical about this round is the flatness, but we can just guess in a flat region like near Bratislava. And we're going to be 98 kilometers away, so still a decent guess here in Malacky. So right near the border there with Austria, interestingly. And I did kind of think some of the houses looked a little Austrian, but or more so Western European, but you know, it's hard to get those vibes sometimes as well. Okay, next one's interesting here. So we're driving right-hand side of the road with double yellows in the center here. We also see them here? Yeah, we do. So let's ignore the signs just for now. So we have like, interestingly, we have some like eucalyptus trees here, which is not, yeah, and this one too. Not entirely typical of this country, but certainly something you can see here. Okay, as for, what else can we say here? We got like a lot of American cars here. This is a very good way to tell this country apart from others. So look, American pickup truck here, here. Yeah, we see 3 at least. So yeah, that's pretty typical. That one might be Asian, but yeah, it is very typical to see these kind of American pickup trucks in Mexico. Of course, we are in Mexico this time. And we got Generation 4 coverage as well, which you can see in Mexico, Colombia, Argentina, and Brazil at time of recording. We also have hills in the background, and Mexico is kind of it's a certain kind of country where it goes flat and then hills and then flat and then hills, and that's kind of so you'll normally be in a flat area but be able to see hills in the background or something like that. Okay, we were also near Tlaxcala, which I have heard the name of. I was thinking it's further over this direction, but maybe I'm wrong about that. Well, because we're on such a good score, I do actually want to find this, of course. So Tlaxcala. That's probably what I was thinking of, Tuxtla. But yeah, this one should not be too hard. I've definitely heard of this place. Well, given that it's so hilly, we shouldn't be anywhere in Yucatan. Yucatan and Campeche are pretty flat areas. So over this direction here, then. Okay, so let's see what number they were. Seems like it might say 130. So we're in 170s over here, 125. So wouldn't be surprised if we were nearby here. Oh, I don't see it. Okay, so here's the state we're in. It's a very small state, so we're guaranteed a good score for that reason. Okay, we're on an overpass with a road underneath it that basically goes directly north to south. So this one's certainly gettable. It doesn't bend at all, from what I saw. No. So we've got a hill to the north as well. So this is certainly findable, and that's why I just want to give it a quick look at least. Yeah, that's too built up. We're kind of outside of a town here. And would that be a yellow road? It's probably just a white road. That's going to make things harder to see. Whereas this one would appear to be a yellow road on the map, I imagine. So, yeah, it might be a little too hard to find. I don't really know if we're going to be able to, but, I mean, regardless, we're going to get a good score. I would not be surprised if we're just outside the town here. Maybe we can use the other town name to help us out. Puebla. So where's Puebla? Oh, there it is. So we're probably between the two towns. In fact, so Puebla is kind of east of us, and maybe southeast, and then so we're probably like somewhere between the two towns. So probably somewhere like over here. So do we see any road that runs north? I don't know. Because it's a longer video, I'm kind of comfortable with trying to get the 5K. That almost looks similar, but it has to be north to south, you see. I have to be running this direction. I don't really see any good candidates, to be honest. Also, our road kind of is running more east to west than the one I clicked on. So, I don't know if we are actually going to find the one here. Okay, well, that's it for searching for me. Let's go right there. And we end up being 14 kilometers away. This was the one. Okay, so there we go. That's what we're on. It wasn't quite directly north to south, but 14 kilometers away is still a great score, and we can get 24.5 here. Looks like we actually will as well, because we are in a small country here. Okay, so here we go. White center lines, very faded. Yellow outer lines. This car would appear to be driving left at the top as well, so that pretty much cuts out the other countries that use yellows on the outsides. Jordan, Israel, and UAE. Okay, so we're looking down in this region here. It's very green with a lot of hills, so Botswana's immediately out. The only hilly region is around Gaborone. You see hills here, but yeah, it would be too dry there anyway. So South Africa, Lesotho, Eswatini. Lesotho would never have this many trees, I'm quite confident in saying. When you see proper forests like this one here, never Lesotho. I want to say that, at least very, very rarely, if so. Okay, so then we're down to South Africa and Eswatini, and... well, with these big pine forests, you see these big pine plantations and these big hills. When you see that combination, it pretty much has to be on the Eswatini-South Africa border. And as for this one, because of this kind of long yellowish grass, I really like Eswatini better. And so I think we're going to be somewhere on the MR19, somewhere around the border here, near Mbabane. So I think that's pretty much what we're dealing with here. Now again, because I'm on such a high score, I could probably find like a way that it, you know, that fits this road. I mean, to be honest, where I've clicked right now doesn't even seem too bad. If we're going there, then it's going to bend away to, yeah, not correct, but I do strongly believe that, yeah, we're going to be near one of these kind of green sections here in the west of Eswatini. She also might be wearing traditional dress, which would be more common in Eswatini. and these kind of straight wooden poles, I think also more common there. I'm quite confident also with this red soil that we are on the Eswatini side of the border rather than South Africa, but regardless, we're going to be close. And so, guys, I think we're going to go for it here. Also, the kind of vast hills. This is also a very hilly area, so yeah, you can just see the rolling hills way into the distance there to the north, which yeah, would check out. We see a lot of hills rolling over to the north there. So let's go for this guess. And we end up being, okay, not too far away, but actually quite a bit further north than I thought. So we get 24,348. There we go. Not a particularly difficult seed because both of the Mexican rounds had signs. Did they not? I think they did. No. This one was more of a vibes guess. So I have a sneaking suspicion that even without the car, even without the Google car there, I will be the top scorer. So we'll see if my suspicion is correct. Regardless, a pretty easy seed and a good way to finish off the video. Guys, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you guys in a video very soon, and I hope you guys learned something. Do leave a comment, smash like as well, and yeah, till next time, goodbye.